I only have one message to give you. I don't care what you think of me. I don't care what you call me. I do care what you do with this information because it is important to our survival as a species.
Hey guys, wanted to make a video today covering the federal troops going around snatching people off the streets, putting them into unmarked vehicles, and a couple other things. I got into that already before. I did also get into FEMA camps and Walmart and all that. This is going to kind of cover a lot of that. I'm not going to try to be all day though. I know I try to get it done quickly and then I ramble. But this is an article from Forbes right here. It says, DHS refuses to remove Trump-ordered federal officers from Oregon after tear gas-filled weekend. And then it says, following the weekend of heightened tensions, the Department of Homeland Security said it will maintain a heavy presence in Portland, Oregon, and send reinforcements to other U.S. cities if needed, resisting calls from local leaders to expel federal agents accused of grabbing Black Lives Matter protesters off the streets and detaining them in unmarked vehicles. Department of Homeland Security Acting Deputy Director Kenneth Cuccinelli told the Washington Post Sunday night that there are no plans to remove controversial federal officers from Portland. When the violence recedes, then that is when we would look at that. Cuccinelli also said tactical units from U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement and U.S. Customs and Border Protection are among those deployed to Oregon, and that the agency will not hesitate to expand similar policing efforts in other cities with rising violence. So all they need is the pretext to establish, the need for them to go in, and then once they have that, they're not going to give it up. So we've seen with these protests, whether or not you want to believe the guy really died or whatever, I'm not for or against any of those theories, it being a false flag or anything like that, but the repercussions from it, whether or not it was manufactured or organic, the response has been very real. The response has been people taking to the streets, whether it's legitimate or people being paid or a mix of both. Federal agents and provocateurs always there to start some shit and then blame it on the protesters if they're just being peaceful. A lot of things happen. It's very multifaceted, but we have these all over the country. We have the supposed destruction of, federal monuments and things like that, and burning down buildings and police stations. So these things are, happening all across the country, and it's giving the justification for them to put more troops on the street. The forces were sent by President Trump to protect federal property under attack by what DHS Secretary Chad Wolf described as violent anarchists. But local officials have accused the officers themselves of driving violence since their arrival, which we don't know. That could be the case. I did see one video of a woman on her porch, and there were a bunch of officers going down the street yelling, "Get inside, get inside." I don't know if it was Minneapolis. I think it was supposed to be. And then they just started firing, rubber bullets at people while they were on their porch doing nothing. So, you're not going to get everything on the media that's really happening. For all we know, that militias have taken over half the United States, fighting back the government, but they're not going to tell you that. So, if it is happening, I guess you're just going to have to look out for it. Let's see. Yeah, see, during a Sunday interview with Fox News, White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows said the president plans to dispatch law enforcement agents to more American cities to quell, quote-unquote, unrest. You see how they don't even put unrest without quotes? Because it's not real. Sure, there's probably destruction and, all that, but it's not enough by any means to justify federal troops on the street snatching people off, and putting them in unmarked vehicles and not reading them their rights. Nothing ever would get to that point that is that bad. Attorney General Barr is weighing in on that with Homeland Security Secretary Chad Wolf, and you'll see something rolled out this week as we start to go in and make sure that the communities, whether it's Chicago or Portland or Milwaukee or someplace across the heartland of the country, we need to make sure their communities are safe. Now, if you're a guy like me, you think that's a really, really funny sentence. Like, that guy should be a comedian. They want to go around and we need to make sure their communities are safe. Hey, get over here. I need to make sure you're safe. Hey, let me make you safe. Get the fuck over here right now. Let me make you safe. Alright, we got a guy. He won't let us make him safe. Alright, we got him. Yeah. That just screams safety to me. That just screams freedom, doesn't it? Check this out. DoD is scouting contractors to set up potential mobile coronavirus hospitals in Florida as outbreak worsens. The DoD is canvassing companies that can set up mobile hospitals to treat coronavirus patients across Florida. The Army is helping the state in case it needs to quickly build out more surge capacity at its hospitals. Potential bidders have to be able to build a temporary hospital unit with 10 days' notice. So they're going to call them portable hospitals. I mean, I call them camps. You know, Arkansas wants to call them isolation centers. Oh, sorry, I misspoke. Isolation facilities. Sorry, guys. Remember when I read you this in my other video? Members of the National Guard of Arkansas have been called to active duty by the order of the governor. Governor Asa Hutchinson ordered 14 medics from the Army National Guard to transport positive COVID-19 patients from locations around the state to an isolation facility near the University of Arkansas for treatment. So, 14 might not seem like a lot, and overall in the grand scheme of things it isn't, but when you're doing a little beta test in a smaller area to maybe see how people will react and how receptive they will be to that, it could be a litmus test for how they believe it would go in the majority of areas. So, always be on the lookout for something like that. So when you see the DoD, the people tasked with defending our country and operating the military are telling us that they're going to be setting up temporary portable hospitals, you should probably be very worried. The Department of Defense is canvassing Florida for potential contractors and locations to set up emergency mobile hospitals to treat coronavirus patients across the state, according to a contract notice posted by the Army Corps of Engineers. The Army is helping the state in case it needs to quickly build out more surge capacity at its hospitals as COVID-19 cases continue to rise, seeking contractors who can build temporary facilities with 10 days' notice. The state doesn't know how many facilities will be needed or where, but officials want to get an idea of how quickly they could build out surge hospital capacity just in case, according to the notice. So, like I said, guys, portable hospitals, whatever you want to call it. Look at this propaganda right here. But anyway, I'm going to show you why you should be worried about that. Let me see if this is it. This is an article that I read earlier, actually, before I made this video. I started reading it. I don't really know anything about this site. I don't know, anything about the person who wrote the article. I just read it because I wanted to read it, just to see what it was about. It seemed interesting. The title is FEMA Prison Ships Arrive in Hawaii. Now, I want you to pay attention, though, because this article was written June 9th of 2018. I am familiar who Dave Hodges is. I don't know if he's the one who wrote it. But it was posted on June 23rd, 2018. So maybe originally this date, but it was posted this date. So 2 years ago. A little over 2 years ago now, right? This is how the article goes. And I'm going to tell you why this caught my attention in a second. I'm just going to give you a rundown. Frequently, I receive information from disgruntled employees to aware and awake personnel with a conscience from the various alphabet soup agencies. However, I have been hearing about FEMA barges since Hurricane Katrina, and getting details has proven almost impossible. There literally is no paper trail regarding mission plans or operations details. So basically, this guy wanted to get information on FEMA barges, which are supposedly these, if you know what a barge is, these big multi-level, multi-story barges, which can be used to hold between 2,000 and 3,000 people supposedly at a time. Not as long-term quarters, but as like maybe a transitional quarters, for a few days, maybe to go between, countries or coasts. Who knows? But the reason why I thought this article was interesting is because something he mentions down after you read a little bit. It talks about Hurricane Harvey and Hurricane Katrina and FEMA's response and how people were seeing FEMA round people up, and then they would never see those people again. and that's why it was kind of like hearsay. This is like secondhand, third-hand information this guy was getting, and I was just reading it because I thought it was interesting. But let's see if I can find that one spot. Well, anyway, the whole thing is he had people telling him how he saw people getting disappeared by FEMA when they went to respond to a disaster, and he had other people corroborating that story that didn't know each other. So if you want to read this article, it's at coercioncode.com. FEMA prison ships arrive in Hawaii. It's an interesting read. I'm trying to get to the part about the pandemic, though. Let's see. Yeah, this is supposedly what they kind of look like. This is why I like the article. So he said, I asked if the Houston and Florida hurricane events were beta tests for FEMA evacuation of large-scale evacuations. I was told without question, and then I was given one nugget of information that was shocking. I was clearly told that a major false flag bio-release will likely happen, and this will lead to the evacuation of large segments of the population, and these people will be vaccinated against any presumed or pretend pathogen. I was told not to trust the vaccinations. This is undoubtedly not the end of this very bizarre story. As interest grows in these events, more people with a conscience and knowledge will be speaking out. In my literature search, I found this video, which I think is very compelling and speaks clearly to the allegations made in my report. It's a video that says FEMA barges arrive in Hawaii. I'm not going to check it out because it's not going to load when I'm trying to record this. But guys, this is what he asked. He said, I asked if the Houston and Florida hurricane events were beta tests for FEMA evacuations of large-scale, FEMA evacuation or large-scale evacuations. There's a lot of typos on this fucking thing. I was told without question, and then I was given one nugget of information that was shocking. I was clearly told that a major false flag bio-release will likely happen, and this will lead to the evacuation of large segments of the population, and these people will be vaccinated against any presumed or pretend pathogen. I was told not to trust the vaccinations. What are we seeing right now? Operation Warp Speed, right? Operation Warp Speed due to the national disaster. First time in United States history it's been declared. Unprecedented. Yeah, I can't even talk today. I'm sorry, guys. I apologize. Unprecedented power given to the president, governors, and just general federal agencies that they would never have otherwise. So these protests and this supposed pandemic, which I think it was going to be one or the other, but they're just running them at the same time to cover both bases, make sure it goes as planned. But this pandemic, guys, it's giving them carte blanche to just do what they want. And if there are barges, who knows? But this article was written in 2018, guys. So talking about a release of a pathogen that would cause, people to be relocated and, get vaccinated. So what is this right here? Let me see if I can find it. Trump says he would mobilize military to distribute corona vaccine when it's ready. Remember this Operation Warp Speed, guys. President Trump said he would rapidly mobilize the U.S. military to distribute a coronavirus vaccine once it's ready, focusing first on nursing homes and the elderly. I guess kill the people that receive the most benefits, right? And will pay out the most first to deadly complications from the virus. Mr. Trump made the comments during an interview with Fox Maria Bartiromo, whatever. We're mobilizing our military and other forces, but we're mobilizing our military on the basis that we do have a vaccine, It's a massive job to give this vaccine. Our military is now being mobilized, so at the end of the year, we're going to be able to give it to a lot of people very, very rapidly, the president said. We will have a tremendous force because assuming we get it, then you have to distribute it, he said. And unless you're mobilized and ready, you're not going to be able to to do it for a long time, so we're starting now. Expects it to be available by the fall. But yeah, guys, they want to give you this vaccination. And this guy wrote in this article 2 years before it happened, talking about getting a vaccination. So check out Hawaii. I was reading Drudge today, and it was talking about how there's a hurricane coming to Hawaii. Who knows? Maybe they'll do a beta test there about, testing Fema and how people respond, being evacuated and having their guns confiscated in Hawaii. It's an island, and it's easy to monitor in that regard. Let's see. Here's another. Oh, no, not that. So let me close that out, guys. Let me close this out. Alright, so all these federal troops on the street, they're setting up, hospitals and things like that. Remember, guys, this is Department of Homeland Security. Why did Homeland Security buy 1.6 billion rounds of ammo? Remember when they went a couple years ago, they bought all that ammunition, and then they ended up getting investigated by the Government Oversight, I think, or Accountability Office. Yeah, the GAO, Government Accountability Office. They were being investigated for buying more than they were allowed to, and they just started hoarding ammunition. Now, why are they doing that? Why would they hoard a bunch of ammunition? The Denver Post on February 15th ran an Associated Press article titled, Homeland Security aims to buy 1.6 billion rounds of ammo. So far, to little notice. It confirmed that the Department of Homeland Security has issued an open purchase order for 1.6 billion rounds of ammunition. As reported elsewhere, some of this purchase order is for hollow point rounds, forbidden by international law for use in war. And I can tell you personally, when I was in Afghanistan, we didn't have hollow points. They just gave us standard 5.56 green tip. But I do know that this is bullshit about the hollow points being forbidden by international law, because I do know that at least the Navy SEALs that I met when I was on a specific base all had hollow points. The guy even gave me a full mag of them. And I'm like, oh, you guys can have hollow points? He's like, oh, yeah. So they do have hollow points. That's bullshit. But anyway, along with a frightening amount specialized for snipers. So they have, the M24, I think, and they have the 50 cal rifles. I don't know exactly what the snipers use, but why would Department of Homeland Security need a bunch of sniper ammo? Think about it. If they're going to be setting people up, on the streets, arresting people, putting them into unmarked vehicles, and sometimes you might not just want to go up to them. What if you want to take people out, with sniper rounds first? I don't know. They could do that and then say that someone else shot them and have it be this, provocateur type of thing. I mean, why would they need all that? And they bought all this ammo for seemingly no reason. This is also reported elsewhere, at the height of the Iraq War, the Army was expending less than 6 million rounds a month. Therefore, 1.6 billion rounds would be enough to sustain a hot war for 20 plus years in America. Into this perplexing outre, I've never heard this word before, purchase of ammo, DHS now is showing off its acquisition of heavily armored personnel characters repatriated from the Iraqi and Afghani theaters of operation, as observed by paramilitary blogger Ken Jorgensen last September. So anyway, this is just talking about how they bought a bunch of ammo. Here's another article, this is from RT, talking about how Homeland Security is under investigation by the Government Accountability Bureau for buying a whole lot of ammo. It's conducting the GAO is now conducting the investigation in the alleged DHS purchase, which is just getting underway. Spokesman Chuck Young said, DHS officials have reportedly denied stockpiling ammunition, but AP reports claim that the agency plans to buy more than 1.6 billion rounds of ammunition over the next 4 or 5 years, and has already bought 360,000 rounds of hollow point bullets for 1.5 billion rounds in 2012. So 3 billion bullets, guys. That's 3 billion bullets. They claim they're buying it in bulk to save money, and then, experts, which, I mean, you don't have to be an expert to point out that hollow points cost nearly twice as much as full metal jacket rounds. And they do. When you go shooting, it's like an unwritten rule of thumb that you bring ball rounds with you. You're not going to shoot hollow points out of range. It's a waste of fucking money. Why would you do that? You know what I mean? And it's not double the cost, but it's, you could buy a box of ammo for like $20, just regular ball rounds, 50 rounds, maybe like $13, and even, and then you buy hollow points and it's like 25. So yeah, almost double, I guess, but still, it's like, why would you do that? Hollow points cause more damage, you know what I mean? The 5.56 rounds that we used, they go into the body and they tumble. We didn't use hollow points, but when you use hollow points, what you do is you have a small wound in the front, and then it just kind of opens up, and you might not have an exit wound, or you might have a bigger exit wound in the back. Those rounds are going to open up and tear through you and cause as much damage as possible. So these hollow point rounds tell you, you don't have to be an expert, but they're telling you that they want to cause maximum damage. So unless they're expecting an invasion from an outside force, which really I don't think is the case. I think it's really them preparing for us and using this coronavirus pandemic and these protests as a pretext to do it. So like I said, they're already putting people in isolation facilities, testing that out. Let's see. We have the United States Department of Homeland Security right here. United States Department of Homeland Security is a cabinet department of the U.S. federal government with responsibilities in public security, roughly comparable to the interior or home ministries of other countries. Its stated missions involve anti-terrorism, border security, immigration and customs, cybersecurity, and disaster prevention and management. It was created in November 2002 in response to 9/11 and began operations the following year. It is the youngest U.S. cabinet department. So this was made in response to a false flag, 9/11, which was a completely planned event, planned by the Mossad, the CIA, I believe elements of English intelligence, and there were probably other countries cooperating too, but definitely Mossad and CIA. You had the Israeli art students there for months before. I can't remember the name of it. I had it in one of my other videos. But you had the team that went around with the helicopter filming people walking up to the windows, taking video of it and stuff. And then you had the Israelis that were caught with the front moving company, trying to head for the George Washington Bridge, and then they went on Israeli television saying that they were there to document the event, and they were proven to be Mossad agents. I think 2 of them were brothers. So yeah, anyway, the whole thing was just used as a pretext to pass legislation to put things like this in place when this wasn't before. We got along perfectly fine, almost 300 years without Department of Homeland Security. Suddenly there's a bunch of terrorism. Suddenly there's a bunch of pandemics. Suddenly there's a bunch of threats. No, it's not. It's just, if they don't go for control now, things are going to get so far out of their hands with advancements in technology, and people are going to start waking up that they'll never get us, under control. So they have to go for it now. Check this out, guys. This is under the criticism section, obviously. You went to data mining. And this is about a scrapped data mining program called Advise that supposedly they don't use anymore. But why do that when you have fusion centers, if you know what that is? If you don't, here's what they are. Fusion centers are terrorism prevention and response centers, many of which were created under a joint project between the Department of Homeland Security and the U.S. Department of Justice's Office of Justice Programs between 03 and 07. Fusion centers gather information not only from government sources, but also from their partners in the private sector. Think like Comcast, Verizon, AT&T. These people are taking all your stuff and sending it to them. Your text messages, everything, your phone calls. You think it's private, it's not. Sorry to break it to you, never was. They are designed to promote information sharing at the federal level between agencies such as the Central Intelligence Agency, Federal Bureau of Investigations, Department of Justice, U.S. military, and state and local law enforcement. As of July 2009, the Department of Homeland Security recognized at least 72 fusion centers. Guys, there are only 50 states. So, 72. These things must be huge. Fusion centers may also be affiliated with an emergency operations center that responds in the event of a disaster. Contact tracing, what do they want to do? They want to get where you've been, who you've been with, who you've talked to, where you've gone, why you went, how many people were there when you went, names of people, blah, blah, blah. They want to track everything you do, and that's going to become part of normal everyday life. Like, pretty soon, it's like you're not going to be able to go anywhere without filling out a form saying where you've been, where you plan on going, how long you plan on being there. It's just like with cash. They want to do away with cash because supposedly it spreads the virus, when in reality it's just because they want everything digital so they can track what you're doing. If you go to a place without any cameras and you pay with cash, they can't track that, so they don't like that. You're a terrorist if you do that. So they want you to have everything documented. Here's another interesting sentence, this little paragraph really. There are numbers of documented criticisms of fusion centers, including relative ineffectiveness at counterterrorism activities, the potential to be used for secondary purposes unrelated to counterterrorism. Yeah, like the whole fucking reason they were started with just terrorism used as a fucking veil, when in reality they just wanted to do it and said, just fucking tell them that it's terrorists. They're stupid. They'll believe it. And there are links to violations of civil liberties of American citizens and others. David Rickers of the Cato Institute has noted a long line of fusion center and DHS reports labeling broad swaths of the public as a threat to national security. The North Texas fusion system labeled Muslim lobbyists as a potential threat. A DHS analyst in Wisconsin thought both pro and anti-abortion activists were worrisome. A Pennsylvania Homeland Security contractor watched environmental activists, Tea Party groups, and Second Amendment rally. The Maryland State Police put anti-death penalty and anti-war activists in a federal terrorism database. So apparently, if you're opposed to war, killing innocent people for no reason, and losing your own people in the process, you're a terrorist. A fusion center in Missouri thought that all third-party voters and Ron Paul supporters were a threat. So if you support Ron Paul, who has, outspokenly been in favor of constitutional law and adhering to the Constitution and respecting checks and balances, if you believe in him or support him, you're a terrorist. So you see how Tea Party groups, Second Amendment supporters, Ron Paul supporters, anti-war activists, these are things the government considers threats. And sure, they might try to, phrase or present it as, well, these are one-off fusion centers, and this specific fusion center said it, but this other one doesn't think it. No, guys, this is one entity. Obviously, you're the enemy. You're an American citizen who believes in America. You're the enemy. Let's check this out. This is the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2012. There's a lot of people who think that this was passed in 2012, and this wasn't around before, but this is like a spending bill that they've had, I think, since the 50s, but this was just the one in 2012, and they add certain things onto it, specifically Section 1021, called Detention Without Trial. Now, this was passed in 2012. The detention sections of the NDAA begin by affirming that the authority of the President under the authorization for use of military force against terrorists, remember what they consider terrorists, guys, people who believe in the Second Amendment, people who believe in the Constitution, we're terrorists, remember. People who are against war, terrorists. A joint resolution passed in the immediate aftermath of the September 11th attacks, that false flag perpetrated by Israel and the United States intelligence agencies. Includes the power to detain via the armed forces any person, including a U.S. citizen. I mean, look at Tower 7, guys, or Building 7. No one talks about that. Building 7 was a controlled demolition. What about the BBC reporter who reported on it before the building actually fell? Didn't she die? I don't know. That's what I heard. I could look into it. But are you going to look into it? How many of you don't know what Building 7 is? Things like that. Like, they think we're just stupid. A lot of you do know if you're watching this video. I'm just, trying to make a point. But these things go by, and, we're not calling for a reinvestigation of 9/11. People aren't protesting in the streets going, investigate 9/11. They should be, but they aren't. People aren't in the streets going, repeal the Patriot Act, repeal the TSA, repeal Homeland Security. We should be out there doing things that matter. We're like, no, one black guy maybe died because of one white guy. Nope, that's more important, guys. It's more important than you can't get on a plane without getting your balls fondled by, fucking whoever the fuck, this 18-year-old punk kid's first job, and the only reason he wants to do it is because they let him smoke weed and they don't drug test him, but you want that, that's freedom, but you'll protest one guy dying, it makes no sense. But yeah, it was passed after the September 11th attacks, and it includes the power to detain via the armed forces any person, including a U.S. citizen, who was part or substantially supported Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, or associated forces that are engaged in hostilities against the United States or its coalition partners, and anyone who commits a belligerent act against the United States or its coalition allies in aid of such enemy forces under the law of war without trial until the end of the hostilities authorized by the AUMF. So keep in mind, guys, they say they want to hold you without trial, just suspend your constitutional rights until the end of the hostilities. We've been in Afghanistan now for 20 years. Damn near the same in Iraq. Do you want to be held for 20 years without being told why? I don't think so. There are people in the world who are going through that right now. I mean, this is just scary, guys. The text authorizes trial by military tribunal. A regular citizen can be tried in a military tribunal or transferred to the custody or control of the person's country of origin. Guys, this is scary, dude. And check this out. Let me see if I can find it. Here's a New York Times piece. Trump has emergency powers we aren't allowed to know about. Given that they could make their first appearance in the coronavirus crisis, Congress should insist on having full access to them. Now, what they're referring to are what's called presidential emergency action documents. And I pulled one of these up. This is off the reaganlibrary.gov, just to show you that these documents do exist and are in fact real. You know what I mean? And you can look them up in the presidential libraries. Most of them are declassified. But they get into things like, I think it starts really on page 9. It gets into powers for Fema, war powers as president, what they have the authority to do, things like that. But these documents do exist. I'm not going to go through it because these online PDFs take forever to even go through and they lag. But they do exist. Presidential emergency action documents. Now, this New York garbage article says Trump has emergency powers we aren't allowed to know about. So let's read what this little thing has to say. The past few weeks have given Americans a crash course in the powers that federal, state, and local governments wield during emergencies. We've seen businesses closed down, citizens quarantined, and travel restricted. When President Trump declared emergencies on March 13th, remember I said that in one of my videos, March 13th, we have 6 months from then. Under both the Stafford Act and the National Emergencies Act, he boasted, I have the right to do a lot of things that people don't even know about. The president is right. Some of the most potent emergency powers at his disposal are likely ones we can't know about because they are not contained in any publicly available laws. Instead, they are set forth in classified documents known as Presidential Emergency Action Documents. Again, those are real. I already showed you that in the Reagan Library. These documents consist of draft proclamations, executive orders, and proposals for legislation that can be quickly deployed to assert broad presidential authority in a range of worst-case scenarios. They are one of the government's best-kept secrets. No presidential emergency action document has ever been released or even leaked. I mean, that's not true. They obviously didn't do their due diligence because they just pulled it up from the Reagan Library. But we'll forget that they didn't do their due diligence. New York Times, am I a better researcher than you? Given the real possibility that these documents could make their first appearance in the coronavirus crisis, Congress should insist on having full access to them to ensure that they are consistent with the Constitution and basic principles of democracy. Yeah, because they do any of that anyway. Presidential emergency action documents emerged during the Eisenhower administration as a set of plans to provide for continuity of government after a Soviet nuclear attack. Over time, they were expanded to include proposed responses to other types of emergencies as described in one declassified government memorandum. They are designed to implement extraordinary presidential authority in response to extraordinary situations. Let's see. Yeah, see, other government documents have revealed some of the actions that older presidential emergency action documents, those issued up through the 1970s, purported to authorize. These include suspension of habeas corpus by the president, not by Congress, as assigned to the Constitution, detention of the United States citizens who are suspected of being subversives, warrantless searches and seizures of and the imposition of martial law. So basically, they give themselves secret powers to do everything that undoes the law of the land, the Constitution. They literally say, no, you got these Bill of Rights, but here's a secret document that undoes the Bill of Rights. Like, fuck, man. I don't even know what to say at this point, because it's just so fucking insane, guys. It's just so crazy. And here's another executive order I was looking up too. Did you know they can make you a slave, a government slave? Executive Order 11000. Assigning emergency preparedness functions to the Secretary of Labor. Section 1 scope, which means ostensibly the powers that they will have and how much they will have. The Secretary of Labor, hereinafter referred to as the Secretary, shall prepare national emergency plans and develop preparedness programs covering civilian manpower mobilization. Civilian manpower mobilization. More effective utilization of limited manpower resources, including specialized personnel, wage and salary stabilization, worker incentives and protection, manpower resources and requirements, skill development and training, research, labor management relations, and critical occupations. These plans and programs shall be designed to develop a state of readiness in these areas with respect to all conditions of national emergency, including attack upon the United States. Civilian manpower mobilization develops plans and issues guidance designed to utilize to the maximum extent civilian manpower resources. Such plans and guidance to be developed with the active participation and assistance of the states and local political subdivisions thereof, and of any organizations and agencies concerned with the mobilization of the people of the United States. Such plans shall include, but not necessarily be limited to... Okay, guys. So it says all this stuff can be done with the active participation and assistance of the states and local political subdivisions thereof, and of organizations and agencies concerned with the mobilization of the people of the United States. It doesn't say the people of the United States are agreeing to this. It says that it can only be developed with the active participation and assistance of other people in charge of us. Manpower management, recruitment, selection, and referral, training, employment stabilization, proper utilization and determination of the skill categories critical to meeting labor requirements. So they'll give you like an ASVAB test, basically, see what you can do, what you can't do, what you'd be good for, and they decide. Sort of like, Brave New World, like, oh, you're an Epsilon, oh, like you're a shit shoveler. So they decide that for you. You don't. They delegate that power to themselves. I guess you could read that if you want, but it just pisses me off. Then we have this article. Trump says he will deploy military if state officials won't contain protest violence. This was June 1st, so they're already snatching people up off the streets. So this was him announcing what he was going to do and showing his hand before he did it, before he sent unmarked vehicles and unmarked federal troops out there to arrest people and not read them the rights and take them off to a place they don't even know. As sirens wailed and flashbang grenades popped across the street, President Donald Trump announced from the Rose Garden that he would use the U.S. military to stop the riots across the country that had been sparked by the death of George Floyd. I am mobilizing all federal resources, civilian and military, to stop the rioting and looting, to end the destruction and arson, and to protect the rights of law-abiding Americans, including your Second Amendment rights. So why did the government Fusion Center for Homeland Security monitor a Second Amendment rights meeting? Why are they considering that terrorism? Why are they considering people who believe in the Constitution and Ron Paul terrorists? And to protect the rights of law-abiding Americans. Who's considered a law-abiding American and who isn't? You know what I mean? Like, they use such ambiguous terminology to basically tell you, without telling you, that your rights don't matter in so many words. We are ending the riots and lawlessness that has spread throughout our country. Really, let's end the lawlessness. Put yourself in jail. Put Hillary in jail. Put Barack in jail. Put George Bush in jail. Put Podesta, the human trafficker and pedophile, in jail. End the lawlessness. You're right. Let's do it. Let's arrest everyone on the Federal Reserve Board. Let's end the income tax. Let's abolish the IRS, FEMA, DHS, all these groups, CIA. Let's shatter them into a million pieces. I'm for that. Let's end lawlessness. Trump said that the governors should deploy the National Guard in great numbers so they can dominate the streets. Did you hear what he just said? Trump said that the governors should deploy the National Guard in great numbers so that they dominate the streets of the American public. He wants them to be dominated by the military. If a city or state refuses to take the actions necessary, so basically if a state reserves its right to exercise its powers as a state, he's just going to say, nah, fuck you, and just go in and do what he wants. So if a city or state refuses to take the actions necessary to defend the life and property of their residents, yeah, that's what they're doing, right? By shooting them in the face with non-lethal rounds. Then I will deploy the United States military and quickly solve the problem for them, Trump said, referring to himself as your president of law and order and an ally of all peaceful protesters. A lot of doublespeak there. God damn, dude. Yeah, I'm your ally. Here's a non-lethal round to the face. He said he was already dispatching thousands and thousands of heavily armed soldiers, military personnel, and law enforcement officers to make sure you're safe. Remember, guys, they want to make sure you're safe. They're going to put a gun to your head and make sure you're safe, whether you like it or not. So, and use it to put a vaccine in your arm, when it's ready. In this FEMA article, this guy talking about FEMA from 2018 says they're going to use a pandemic, probably like a fake pathogen, in order to get people to get a vaccine. God damn, guys. Let's see. Oh, there was another thing I want you to check out. It's on FEMA's own website. It's called the Pandemic Influenza Continuity of Operations. I'm not going to get into it because this has already been too long. But basically, guys, we got federal troops snatching people up off the streets. We got the president willing to throw the military at anything and everything he can at any moment he can, even if it's not justified. And if it's not justified, they'll find a reason to justify it. Just like, what was it, the Reichstag fire under Hitler? They used that as the pretext to just go in, and just start, passing legislation, start, doing things they want to do. It's 9/11, Gulf of Tonkin. There's plenty you could go by. Pearl Harbor, for all we know. I don't know, guys. I'm tired. You probably hear it in my voice. I don't want to keep going on all night. I just wanted to make this video to just kind of emphasize a point that a lot of these things might seem unrelated, and it might seem like, oh, the left is going against the right or the right's going against the left. No, it's the people behind the scenes that are controlling this that have an agenda. And they want to get you chipped. Don't get that vaccine, and if someone comes to your door asking you where you've been, who you've had contact with, you tell that person to get off your property, right? And I'm telling you, you need to exercise your Second Amendment rights. If you can legally carry, I'll say it like that. If you can legally carry where you're at, do it. If you can arm yourself, do it. If you can prepare, do it. If someone comes to your house and tries to force something into your arm or your child's arm, what are you going to do? I suggest you create a new hole in their head. That's just my advice. But I'm always nonviolent. But if they're going to start getting violent and they're going to start going to people's houses, start rounding people up, start forcing things into people's bodies, if you don't have the ultimate choice of what does or what doesn't go in your body, then you're not free. And if you're not free, you have nothing to lose. Remember that. God bless. Take care.